Alright, video editing systems. This lecture shouldn't be too long. This is more of just a technical type thing. Now, there are a ton of editing systems out there. They're also called non-linear editing systems. You hear those terms interchangeably. Non-linear. The reason being is that you can start at one point in the timeline, move back to another point in the timeline. There was a time in editing where they had what's called linear editing, where you edit from tape to tape just in a linear fashion. If you watched, I believe, part one of the history of nonlinear editing that I posted in the video notes, they talk about that. But virtually all editing systems nowadays are called nonlinear. And I'll show you a little bit more about how that works here in a second. But when it comes to nonlinear editing systems, excuse me, there are really three main brands, main companies out there. Those are Avid, Adobe Premiere, and actually it's Adobe Premiere CC, or Premiere Pro CC is also what's called. It stands for Creative Cloud. And then Final Cut Pro X. Avid has been around the longest. Final Cut used to have a fairly large market share, but a few years ago, Final Cut is an Apple product from Macintosh computers. And a few years ago, for whatever reason, Apple decided to not prioritize their professional line of editing products and kind of scaled it back. It's still used by professionals. It still is a fairly robust program, but it's just not used as much by professionals anymore because they completely changed the look and the feel of it. And there were a lot of filmmakers that felt it just wasn't powerful enough. And now Adobe Premiere, so I'm covering that over. Premiere, it's kind of the up and coming one right now because it's bundled with Adobe. Has a number of programs. Got Photoshop, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, which is the sort of the industry standard for graphics manipulation in terms of just changing photographs. They also have another program called Adobe After Effects, which if you're doing special effects on television and even films, After Effects is probably the program you're doing it through. And plus, I have a number of other products that are used extensively throughout in Illustrator and SpeedGrade and all those different programs. And what's nice about the Adobe platform is that all of them talk to each other pretty seamlessly. So really your two biggies though are Avid and Adobe Premiere. So you'll run across these. It's really important really to know both. You're in this industry, you want to know both. At a minimum, you want to know Avid and you want to know Adobe Premiere. Because you're going to run into a company looking to hire you to edit, and they're going to either be an Avid house or they're going to be an Adobe Premiere house, probably these days. There are other programs called Sony Vegas, and a lot of people love those, but you are very unlikely going to find a production company, a serious production company, that's going to be running anything like Vegas. Which is just another program that's out there, or other kinds of programs. They're either going to be running a version of Avid or they're going to be running Adobe Premiere, probably Adobe Premiere CC. So you want to know these programs, and we do teach them here at Cincinnati State. All right, when you're looking at a video editing system, they're all set up in their own subtle ways. They all have their little idiosyncrasies in terms of where you go to achieve certain things, but virtually every program is going to have the same for Windows in one way or another. Final Cut Pro X, this is actually a little bit different, but I'm not going to go into that because it really is not used professionally that much anymore. But Premiere and Avid certainly use these. Every nonlinear program is going to have a preview window, sometimes called a source window, sometimes called a viewer, but it's a preview window, which is here. It's going to have the program window, which is here. It will have your bins, which is here, and then your timeline, which is down here. Every program is going to have preview, program, bins, and timeline. And go through these now. Preview window. This is where all edit decisions are made. In other words, it is where you pick which shots you will use and decide where each shot will begin. I'm going to leave this program and actually go into Avid real quick here. This is my preview window. Again, this is a typical Avid setup. Preview window. My raw footage goes into here. Okay, this is, I have a clip that lasts, let's say, 3 minutes, and I want to grab 30 seconds out of it. So how do I do that? I am going to go here, and this is actually a mini version of our timeline that's down here. And this is just a music video I grabbed from a group called OK Go, which is kind of funny because it's actually, this whole scene takes place in one shot. But I will go through here and find where I want my shot to begin. Let's say there. And then I'll mark an endpoint, and I'll click on this button here. Or there's other ways I can do this, but for now I'm going to click on here. You'll see I have a little marker that goes here. And I want this clip to last till it goes to here. So I'm going to click here to mark out. Now I've made a decision. I'm only going to be using this section right here. Let me see about this section right here through those 2 points. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit more. There we go. You can see on these 2 points here, that's my in point and my out point. This whole piece here and beyond the edges are parts of my timeline. But this point from here to here is the only part of this clip that I'm going to be using. And I made this in my preview window. I'm previewing. I'm taking a look at it ahead of time to see how it looks. Alright, so that's the preview window. Next is my program window. This is what the audience sees. This shows you when, whatever I see in this window, that's where my audience sees it. I'll go back to the video here in a second, or Avid here in a second. Next are my bins. This is where the raw footage goes. This is where you collect and organize all the media that you will use in your project. Typically, you would create sub-bins for your video, audio, graphics, any other materials you want to organize. The goal is to be able to find what you need when you need it. So remember, going back to one of the first things you do in the edit is assemble and organize. This is where you're going to be assembling and organizing your material. Then lastly, you have your timeline. And your timeline is just like a timeline in history class, where you start at a certain point in history and you move forward. That's exactly what a timeline is. All right, so let's take a look. Again, going back here, break these things down a little bit more. So this was my preview window. Now to get the footage for that, I went over here. Now if I double click on here, this is where I'll get tone. This is just audio. You can't hear, unfortunately. If I go back on here again, here's my video again. It shows up my previews. This is my bin. I call this my demo bin. And so in the bin is where I have all those materials. Here, I'll zoom in on the bin again. So if I double click on tone, I get just sound over here. I double click on the OK Go music video, and then I get my clip, and that brings it in that preview bin. And this little blue line here is called a playhead. And wherever it is on that timeline at 24 frames per second is where I'm seeing it. And I'm back in here about the part I'm keeping. Zoom back out. Alright, so this is then my program bin. And my program bin is tied into my timeline. Because my timeline here shows me is, I got from 00 on up to however long this music video lasts, which is just a couple of minutes. And I have about for the first 43 seconds of it edited on here. So, but wherever that playhead is, this little blue line here, you can see it shows up here in my program window. I click here, it's up here. Click here, and it jumps to that point in the music video. Alright, now with the edit that I did over here, where I made an in point and out point, let's say I want to add that to the end of this clip. I can click in my preview window, and drag it down here onto my timeline. And there it is. I was running a little bit slow because I'm recording my lecture while I'm doing this. But you'll see now, there's that clip that I had. I can add it into the timeline. And I could add it in the middle here. I could add it lots of different places. I can make other edit points. Up here, I can click, mark in, hit play, mark out. And this time, I'm actually going to do an edit in the middle of my timeline here. I'm going to do it a different way as well. I'm going to do what's called a splice in. I'm just going to click this button and click it. And there it is in my timeline in the middle. And this is where I talked about, remember I talked about before about being nonlinear. What I can do is I can pick this up and move it over here. And move these things around. I'm making a mess of my timeline here, but I can move these things around. I'll pick this up and move it over here, and hopefully this won't crash my system. So this is a sloppy edit. Not much is really happening here, but as you can see, when you're editing, these things can, this is what nonlinear is about. I can pick something up from the end, I can put it back to the beginning, I can even copy a clip and then paste it someplace else. This all happens on the timeline. So again, in terms of windows, this is our preview window, this is our program window, these are our bins, and this is our timeline down here at the bottom. Right?